Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Deborah Ambrosetti. I'm a professor in the College of Education, Secondary Education. Before I got my PhD, I was an English teacher, and I know how hard it is to try and teach parts of grammar and literature to students in secondary school. Some want to be there, some don't, and this pandemic doesn't help us. So today I'm going to talk to you about using films to teach literature. Here are some sites that you can use, and they can be very helpful. So I put up some, you'll notice during this, I will put up some things to help you navigate teaching online better. Why do we do it? First, you need the rationale. You know that it's motivating, it's enjoyable. Students love films. It may not be the films you watch, but they are films. And oftentimes, before I got my first teaching job, I was a substitute teacher, and they just love, please show us a film, because they think they're not learning, which will make your job a heck of a lot easier. Okay. Another benefit, it's a source of authentic and varied language, so students can see how they're speaking. This is especially good with students who are English second language learners, because they can actually hear the words, the pronunciation. Even your students who English is their first language, they can also, you may say to them, okay, and they use slang. What's an example of slang in this movie? What's an example of them not using, let's just say, student proper English? So you can talk to them, but you can ask for specific grammatical cues. Anything that you're trying to get across, you can use a film. Now, think about this. Just take a second and think, what reasons can you give for using films in your own classrooms? Now, you'll each have varied reasons, but it doesn't make them wrong. It just makes them right for your situations. Okay. Now, using media, it enhances teaching and learning. And it's not instead of traditional approaches, it's an addition to it. And it also bridges the gap between what they're learning, the objectives of the course, and actual knowledge. It engages students, helps them with their retention, they get interested, and it illustrates the relevance of many concepts. Now, you got to think about visual cues. Some students are extremely visual. You have to show them how to do it. And that's where film comes in. It's really great because they can see it. It's a visual context. They also hear it. For the auditory learners who love lectures, they can hear it. And then you have them write. And in it, they can move around. So you're getting, even the kinesthetic learners are being involved. It lets them listen to it. It sees the visual supports, facial expressions. Now, I also teach adolescent development here at the university. And one of the things we note is that adolescents cannot read facial expressions very well. That's why they sometimes drive you crazy, because you'll be angry and they won't read your face very well. And you're just not understanding, why aren't they seeing that I'm not happy with the situation? So the movies, the language involved and the expressions on their faces and gestures, they absolutely support students' understanding of facial expressions and cues. It also helps with the verbal message, and it makes it a focus of attention. It can bring variety, flexibility. A whole film sequence can be used. You can take out part of a film. You can have them rewrite the end. There are so many different things you can do. You can also put on, I do this for some of my English language learners. What I do is I put on the caption feature so that students can read along with it. I lived in Europe when I was first married, and I was living in Portugal. And let me tell you, it really helped. The films, I would see it, and then I'd be able to read the screen and then look back up. And it helped me develop Portuguese. Albeit I wasn't very good, but I could get around the country. It can be a springboard, follow-up tasks, discussions, debates. Now, this is especially good since we're using Zoom. You can have them engage in discussions, debates. You can even have them role play and tape it and upload it, reconstruct a dialogue, summarize. And also you can, excuse me, you can see full feature films, short sequences. You can use YouTube videos. It doesn't matter. What you find is relevant to your classroom, because remember, we're relying on you. You're the experts in the classroom. You're the experts in your field. Now, use movies to enhance comprehension. One problem is that, how do you assess the comprehension? How do you know? Too often we give summative assignments, like an exam. Or do we give quizzes maybe? Maybe you use reading logs. And then what do? How do you follow up with a quiz or reading logs that they're missing crucial points of understanding? Assessments are important for letting students know, to let us know as teachers, who's not keeping up. A lot of times they don't want to ask for help, but how can we figure out who is not keeping up and who's not quite getting what we want? A video version of the novel gives you a quick and easy solution to this. Maybe I used to teach Old Yeller, and then I would show the film and we would compare and contrast the film so that students really ended up being very engaged. And so if you show just clips that show the chapter you're reading, it's really beneficial. It supports their learning. Now think about this. There must be ways that you can think of to assess students' understanding of the film. You can have them, well, I'll get into that a little later, but think about that. How do you think, you know your students best, how can you best access how they're understanding what you're teaching? Okay, with the novel, when it's still fresh, students who have strong comprehension skills, they'll love to see how the film compares. It used to drive me crazy. I'd read a book and see the movie and I say, oh, this is terrible. That's not how I thought the protagonist would look. But that's something that shows you that the students are reading it and watching it when they are now comparing and contrasting. The students who struggle, they'll be able to see, oh, that's the part I missed. Now, we have unmotivated readers, students who I would get students who came into middle school who really couldn't read past the very basic elementary level. And so now what do? And so we have students who don't like to read, and especially novels. So using film versions, you're getting them excited. You get, if they're struggling, you can really, it's kind of a tether to help them keep interested and follow along in the novel. You show film versions, several most exciting, funny, interesting moments. That catches them. That really grabs them because they want to know more about it. Think about when you go to a movie theater. Well, when we used to, and you would have the trailers in the beginning, and you say, oh, goodness, oftentimes I forget what I came to see because the trailers were more interesting. Ask them to write down how they predict. Maybe you show them a 5-minute clip and say, what do you think? What are your predictions? I used to just show them the novel and ask them based on the drawing, the illustration on the cover, what do you think this book is going to be about? But now if you have them write down, once you show them a clip of a movie and then ask them to predict, that really helps build their comprehension and now their what kind of foreshadowing is happening. By doing so, you're asking them, get interested before we even begin to read it. Now, even your unmotivated ones, they'll want to watch the movie. They'll look and see a 5-minute clip, and then they'll make guesses. But then you start making a game of it. Oh, let's see if you're right. Let's see if you and your predictions were correct. Now, we also use it to develop extended thinking strategies. Okay, these are really important skills, and it can be difficult to fit into our lessons, especially, we have a myriad of students in class with different abilities. These can really help with extended thinking. Maybe it's the covering your essential vocabulary, comprehension, compare, contrast, analyze, perspective, constructive support. It can be really challenging to address all of these, but using films really helps make it manageable. Working groups, 10 differences and similarities between the first 3 chapters and the first 10 minutes of the movie. And then as a class, after they watch it, how to change their perspective, have them talk about it, discussion, debate, get into groups. You can even put up, you can have them like a poster board online and say, write down in your group, what do you think, how your perspective changed? How can you compare and contrast? How are the characters portrayed? And the students, when they work in group and they write on poster board or whatever, you're really coming up with a great variety of answers from your students, and everyone has to be involved. They can't just sit in the back of the room. And that's one of the great things I find about teaching online. I've taught online for many years. And I find that nobody gets to be quiet. Nobody gets to hide because you're requiring a response from everybody. And it's very easy for you to say, oh, no, Michael, I didn't hear you. And what are your thoughts on this? And they can't hide it. And if they say, well, I don't know, say, okay, I want to watch just 5 minutes again and then come back. I'm coming back to you. And then you'll have tons of chances to increase their extended thinking. And all you have to do is use a few minutes of the movie each week while you're covering the novel. You don't have to show it all at once. It's not taking the big part of your class. It can even be the hook you're looking for to begin your class session. Now, let's think about extended thinking strategies. You can hold a class debate over which version is better. Was it the novel, the film? And then they can't just say film or novel. You have to ask them, okay, support it. Tell me why. Because you know adolescents are great at saying no, yes, it was better, it was worse, and they don't want to extend their answers. Tell them what. Come up with 2 reasons or 3 reasons why you say what you're saying. And then also a really great thing is you can have them pretend to be a character in a novel. They can film themselves. This might be really wonderful online because they don't have to get up in front of the entire class. If they just take a phone and they can videotape themselves and they can then upload it, and you can have them, all the other students watch each other's and tell us, how do you think they did they portray the character correctly? How was it different? And then you could also have them maybe write a letter to a character in a novel about an event. Like if you're reading Sense and Sensibility, and this would be more for high school students, you can have them write a letter to Mr. Derby. And as the actor in the film, you show who is Mr. Darby, and then you read the novel, and you go back and forth. Watch the film version, ask students to add to their letter, and then in a different color. So they're always building on, they're extending their thinking. Now, this is one assignment I thought was pretty good, working in group of 4, a lesson and assessment for the following movies. Now, I would say, when I talk about a lesson for you, what I mean is maybe you have them role play. Maybe you have them act as a character. Maybe you have them rewrite the end. That would be the activity. And then how would you assess it? Say, and I would even ask my students, how do you think I should grade this? Because now you're getting them thinking into your own sphere. I wanted to show you this site. It's from the British Council, and the address is up top here. It is English Nexus, and this is supposedly made just for English language learners. However, I found it extremely useful when dealing with my secondary English students, because not only do you have English learners, but what you're doing for English learners also works for everybody in the classroom. But it gives you an idea, because that's one of the things you want to do, is come up with some ideas. How am I going to help my students understand certain concepts, certain parts of speech? You're trying to teach genres, you're trying to teach grammar. There's so many different things you're trying to do. That's why using film is so great. It encompasses all of these things, and they're also reading the novel. Now, you can also tell when they really haven't read the novel, because the film may have different versions. And that's, you can say, listen, you want to warn them of that. Say, I'll know if you're not following along with the novel because the film may be a bit different, and I'm going to ask you to compare and contrast. So with this, you'll see, making most of classroom. This one is a 90-minute lesson, and you understand parts of film, describe the type of films, and then it gives you some objectives and extension activities. And so you'll see your DVD, pictures, blurb, you'll see there. So these give you some ideas, and at the very bottom, you'll notice it says resource 1, resource 2. They give you the resources at the very bottom of this site. And so here you go through and it tells you about the activity. This one is you're pre-teaching relevant vocabulary. You can put them into groups, and it's so easy to put them into groups on Zoom. You show the questions, then you ask them in pairs to respond. Now, I had to go into a group with my own department meeting, and it was really helpful because you make sure that somebody is the taskmaster and keeps them on task, or else they'll be talking about what they ate for lunch. So you do it that way. You ask them, what kind of film is it? And they have a discussion about it. Again, then activity 2, you play trailers. What kind of film do you think this is? Right? And watching and listening, vocabulary, differentiation, grammar. You're seeing all these different things. We even have differentiation with extension, speaking and listening. Extension, again, cooler, and then reading, speaking, pronunciation. there. So now let me show you the very bottom here to give you templates for matching your own vocabulary. So you can easily put this up online, have students create them themselves. And you go down, and also genres. That's another thing you're going to have to do is teach students, what is a genre? What do you mean by genre? And so you start explaining, because remember, as I said, you're seeing comedy and they have a happy face, romance, and it looks like they're hugging in, a chick flick, history. Well, a happy, frightened, angry, thoughtful, because research has shown, I teach adolescent development here at the university, and one of the things that research has shown is that adolescents cannot identify our emotions based on our facial expressions. They showed, I forget how many students in this research, pictures, and they said, what is the emotion that person is showing? And the picture was a very angry woman. You could tell it was like a mother just getting ready to yell at her kid or something. And the kids were like, oh, sad. They couldn't get it right. The majority of students could not read the facial expressions. So this is a really great way of helping them to understand it too. Yes, it was a genre. What are your clues that you would say this is a comedy? The genre was comedy. Why did you think it was romance? Is it historical? Is it accurate? Is it happy? So the students will also have to figure out, based on what they're seeing, what they're reading, what the genre is. But if you can see, I'm going to go slower up. See? And you can see it's fantastic. Like one, students, ask them what they've watched recently, preferably something all learners likely have watched. And that's really easy in this time. And then differentiation. Now you've got low level learners, and then you've got higher level learners. That's really great, because too often we teach to the middle. I mean, our job is extremely difficult. How do we get everybody involved? That's a very difficult task. Here we're giving, in one lesson, you've got differentiation and extension. You've got lower level learners and you've got higher level learners. So this is great. And as you see, they'll write about a film or a television program they've watched or something they like and know well. And this can appear, they could be writing this in their own language and then interpreting it. So these are great for English learners. And then again, you have reading, speaking activities, group levels, the same people. Now, when you put students into groups, it's extremely important to know you cannot match groups that are too different. So high level learners cannot be with low level learners. High level with medium and medium with low, but never high and low. There's too much of a gap between those two, and each will get frustrated. So make sure when you're pairing them that you're taking these into consideration. So with that, I hope you enjoy this, and I'm going to leave this up. You can see at the top, it's the ESOL from the British Council. They have many, many resourceful activities and lessons for you. But I just pull from everywhere and try to find anything I can. There are great YouTube videos on this, but there are a lot of different ways you can pull into teaching English using film. It's not a fluff activity. It's actually, I've used this with my students, and it's very engaging from them, and they don't even realize that they're learning vocabulary, they're learning grammar, they're learning genres. It's a really wonderful way of getting the content across to students. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions, please contact Dr. Cynthia Gautreaux, and she can forward them to me, and I will get back to you. And I wish you all the best.